On my 30th birthday I saw it. A photo of my sister laughing under the Eiffel Tower, champagne in hand. The caption read, "Surprise birthday trip from mom and dad." The comments were full of hearts and clapping emojis. Then I saw my mom's reply, glowing in blue under the post. "She's the only one who makes us proud." I just sat there, phone in hand, cold coffee on the table, a candle still burning in the cake I bought for myself. 30 years of trying, of waiting for that one text, that one call, and all I got was a public reminder that I was forgettable. I opened the family bank account, the one I'd been managing for the past 5 years. I was the organized one, the responsible one. Translation, the one who did the boring stuff no one else wanted to do. As the numbers appeared on the screen, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not sadness, but clarity. It wasn't about money. It was about how they always assumed I'd just stay, the background character in my sister's highlight reel. My hand didn't even shake when I clicked withdraw. Not everything, just enough to get their attention. I watched the loading icon spin, a soft hum filling the quiet apartment. Then transaction successful. That small green checkmark felt louder than any happy birthday they could have given me. I leaned back, exhaled, and whispered to no one, "Happy birthday, Ava. My name is Ava Morgan. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because this isn't just about money. It's about what happens when the person you always ignored finally decides to walk away." Have you ever been treated like a stranger in your own family? It took them 2 days to notice. 2 days before my phone lit up with mom's name, Bouquet, the same contact I hadn't seen on my screen since last Christmas. I let it ring out once. Then twice. By the third call, curiosity won. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my tone light. "What did you do?" she demanded. No greeting. No, happy birthday, even belatedly. Just sharp panic. The account's missing $25,000. I let the silence breathe. "I withdrew what was mine," I said simply. "Yours," she scoffed. "Ava, that's family money. That's our money." That word again. It never included me when it came to vacations, celebrations, or love. But the second it involved a number on a screen, suddenly I was part of the hour. "Don't worry," I said. "You still have enough for croissants in Paris." Her breath caught. "How dare you? Your sister didn't even want to go. We planned this for her because she deserved it." Deserved it. Like she earned the title of favorite through oxygen alone. I almost laughed. Almost. But instead I just said, "You made it clear she's the only one who makes you proud. So consider this my resignation from trying." I hung up. An hour later Dad texted, "We need to talk. You've gone too far. Gone too far." Funny, considering they'd never thought they'd gone too far by forgetting their daughter's birthday for 3 years in a row. That night I opened a folder on my laptop. One I'd started months ago but never had the courage to touch. Plan B. Inside were scanned documents, investment statements, and a detailed record of every payment I'd managed for the family since I started handling their finances. Rent, insurance, taxes. All in my name, all traceable. They'd used my credit, my work, my signature because it was easier that way. And suddenly I realized something. I didn't just have their money. I had their trail. For the first time in my life, the balance of power had quietly shifted. I shut my laptop and stared out the window. Paris glittered on my sister's feed, but my apartment was silent, calm, sacred. They took my birthday. They took my peace. Now I was going to take back everything else. The next morning I woke to a dozen missed calls and 3 unread messages from my dad. Each one angrier than the last. "We trusted you. Do you realize what you've done? You'll regret this." But between the lines of outrage I saw something else. Fear. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what I might know. I brewed coffee, opened my laptop, and clicked into the old folders. I'd started handling the family finances 5 years ago, when my dad's small business began struggling. He called it temporary help. But like everything else in our family, temporary became permanent the second it benefited them. I started tracing transactions. Every month, thousands were being reimbursed from a fake business account I'd set up in Dad's name, under my signature. Invoices I never wrote. Supplies I never ordered. And every document tied to my SSN. That's when it hit me they hadn't just used me. They'd built their comfort on my credit. I felt sick. All those times Dad joked that I was the practical one, that Mom said I'd never understand what it takes to succeed. They weren't compliments. They were distractions. I scrolled deeper past the numbers and dates, until I found one folder labeled Tax Archive. Inside, scanned tax returns from the last 4 years. And in the signature section, mine forged cleanly in perfect cursive. I froze. The air felt thick. It wasn't just emotional betrayal anymore. It was legal. That's when the doorbell rang. It was my landlord, a quiet man who rarely spoke more than a sentence. "There's a letter for you," he said, handing me a thick white envelope. The return address made my stomach turn. Morgan and Sons Accounting. My father's company. Inside, a single line typed in bold. "Return the funds immediately, or we'll be forced to take legal action." I laughed. A low, hollow sound. Legal action, for money that came from my own name, my own credit. I opened my notes app and typed 4 words that felt like oxygen. Time to even out. That night I drove to my parents' house. The lights were on, the curtains half drawn. Through the window I saw Mom laughing at something on TV. My sister, jet-lagged but glowing, sat beside her, scrolling through photos. I should have felt anger. But instead I felt clarity. They still thought they had control. But they'd forgotten one thing. You can't threaten someone who's already lost everything. I didn't sleep that night. Instead I spread everything on the kitchen table like a storyboard. Tax returns, bank statements, scanned invoices, dates circled in red. The city hummed outside my window, oblivious, while I traced the map my family had laid over my life. Realization came slow and precise, the way a surgeon draws an incision. This wasn't a one-time theft. It was a pattern. Small transfers disguised as reimbursements, credit lines opened in my name to help with payroll, checks routed through shell vendors. Each move by itself could be explained away with an embarrassed sigh and a shaky excuse. Together they were a machine. And I finally had the manual. What I didn't have was drama. I didn't want headline theatrics or a viral spectacle. I wanted consequences that fit the crime, measured, undeniable, and final. Revenge, I decided, would be procedural. It would be the slow, grinding kind that leaves no room for denial. First, documentation. I printed copies, had the originals scanned and time-stamped. I made 2 locked folders on an external drive and hid one in a safety deposit box. Physical evidence mattered. Nostalgia and guilt would not. Then I did something that felt both cowardly and brave. I called a lawyer. I didn't want a crusader. I wanted someone who understood ledger lines and human dishonesty. Her name was Rachel, and she listened without interruption. When I finished, she said, "You didn't act rashly. That withdrawal was a catalyst, not a crime." She advised caution. No public posts, no threats, no sudden transfers that could be traced back to me and used as leverage. She suggested channeling the evidence into 2 directions: financial reclamation through the bank's dispute processes, and a legal motion to compel my parents' company to produce records. I took notes like a student in class. Each legal term was another tool I could wield. Audit requests, restitution claims, subpoenas. The words were dry but powerful. They translated my hurt into procedure. Next, leverage. If they had built a life on my credit, then their house of cards would have specific weak points. Corporate accounts with sloppy bookkeeping, vendors who hadn't been paid in full, lines of credit with missed disclosures. I made a list of names. Vendors from invoices, the accountant who'd signed off on several returns, the payroll firm with an unprofessional email address. Each name was a seam to pull. I also prepared for fallout. My parents would be furious. My sister would cry betrayal. There would be calls, threats, perhaps even legal intimidation. I felt the fear, let it wash through me, then put it in a folder labeled expected reactions. Fear loses power when you anticipate it. On the afternoon I decided to act, I dressed deliberately. No mascara to smear, no jewelry that could be pawned for sympathy. I drove to the bank and asked for a meeting with the fraud investigator. In the waiting room I watched people move through their small dramas, And for the first time in years, I felt the weight shift under my feet. The investigator was efficient, suspicious, then quietly impressed as I laid out the paper trail. She asked one practical question that I hadn't fully considered aloud. Do you want us to freeze the accounts while we investigate? I could hear my mother's earlier words, our money, as if they were a prophecy finally catching up. Yes, I said, and my voice didn't waver. Outside, the sky had turned the color of old paper. I smiled, not triumphant, not cruel, but certain. The first legal gear engaged. The phone in my pocket buzzed. An unknown number. I picked it up. Hello, I said. A voice I hadn't heard in years spoke one sentence that made my stomach drop. We need to talk now. Come to the office. The office looked smaller than I remembered. It used to feel intimidating. The glass doors, the mahogany desk, the framed certificates that meant we made it. Now all I saw was clutter and lies. Dad was standing by the window when I walked in, his reflection fractured in the glass. Mom sat behind the desk, arms crossed, face powdered pale. And my sister Lily, the golden one, scrolled on her phone like she couldn't wait to leave. Sit, Dad said, his voice low and cold. I didn't. Instead, I leaned against the chair, letting silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. You froze our accounts, he said finally. Do you have any idea what you've done? I do, I said. I just didn't think you'd notice so fast. Mom exhaled sharply. Ava, stop this nonsense. We trusted you with our finances. You forged my signature, I said quietly. For years. That got her attention. Her eyes darted to Dad. He didn't flinch. Of course not. He was the master of calm denial. I don't know what you think you found. I found everything. I cut in. Fake reimbursements. Shell vendors. Loans under my name. You've been using my credit score to fund your company and your little vacations. Lily finally looked up. Wait, what? Mom snapped. Stay out of this. But it was too late. The perfect image was cracking. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the desk. These are copies of your forged tax returns, signed in my handwriting. The originals are already with an investigator. Dad's jaw tightened. You think you can blackmail us with this? I smiled, the same soft, polite smile they'd trained me to wear since childhood. No, Dad. I don't need to blackmail anyone. I'm just giving you a chance to clean it up quietly before the IRS does. The room fell silent. Even Lily stopped breathing for a second. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this to them? I looked at her. The sister I used to braid hair for, defend at school, cheer for at every piano recital I was never invited to perform in. They did it to themselves, I said. I'm just done covering for it. Mom stood up. Her voice shook. We're family, Ava. You don't destroy your family over mistakes. Mistakes end when someone admits them, I said softly. You didn't. Dad leaned forward, voice low. You won't win this. I already have, I said. You just don't see it yet. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Mom whisper, What will people think? I almost laughed. Even now, their fear wasn't losing me, it was losing their image. Outside, the afternoon light hit my face. My hands were steady. The fear that had lived in me for years was gone. I unlocked my phone and opened a message from Rachel, my lawyer. Read. They'll contact you soon. Once they realize how deep the paper trail goes, they'll beg for a settlement. I typed back one word. Good. But I wasn't done yet. There was one more thing they didn't know. One last truth buried under the surface. Because in cleaning up their mess, I had found something much darker than forged signatures. I thought I'd already seen the worst of it. Fraud, forgery, lies. All predictable sins for people who'd traded love for control. But what I found next made those crimes look like small talk. It started with a discrepancy. A $40,000 wire transfer labeled consulting. It didn't match any of the usual shell vendors. I searched through archived invoices, scanned contracts, even old emails. Nothing. Until I checked the sender's initials again. Lily Morgan. My stomach went cold. I opened her tax filings, the ones Dad always claimed he filed to make her life easier. The numbers didn't add up. Her declared income was inflated, padded with consulting fees from their company. But that money hadn't been spent. It had been redirected into a separate savings account under both my parents' names. My sister's name had been used too, but not for her benefit. They'd used her as a shield. If the business was audited, it would look like she was being paid, not them. And then it clicked. The Paris trip, the expensive gifts, the performance of generosity. It was all laundering wrapped in affection. I closed the laptop and sat in silence. For years I'd envied her, the golden daughter, the one they adored. But she was just another tool. We both were. That night I called Rachel. When I told her what I'd found, she didn't sound surprised, just impressed. You realize this changes everything, she said. They're not just guilty of fraud against you. They're falsifying payroll and tax statements. That's criminal, Ava. I felt my throat tighten. So what happens next? You decide, she said. Do you want to expose them or own them? The word own lingered in the air. I didn't want prison sentences. I didn't want headlines. I wanted control. For once in my life, I wanted them to answer to me. So I drafted an email to my parents. Polite. Professional. Attached. A detailed summary of every fraudulent transaction, every forged document, every redirect tied to their names. The subject line read, Proposal for resolution, Ava Morgan. No threats, no emotion. Just data. Undeniable, clinical, final. Within an hour, Dad called. I let it ring once before answering. You think you can blackmail us? He said. His voice cracked. This will destroy our family. No, I said quietly. It'll redefine it. He went silent. Then, what do you want? Transfer the company to my name, I said. All of it. You can stay on as consultants, but I control the finances, the decisions, and the accounts. He laughed, the kind of laugh men use when they think they still have leverage. You're bluffing. Then go ahead, I said. Call the IRS before I do. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. You'll regret this, he whispered. Maybe, I said. But at least it'll be on my terms. I hung up, heart pounding but calm. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was the one holding the strings. But control has a cost. And I was about to find out what it felt like when your enemies share your last name. They didn't sign the transfer. Of course they didn't. People like my parents never surrender, they scheme. 3 days after my proposal, I received a summons. Morgan & Sons Accounting versus Ava Morgan. Unauthorized withdrawal and defamation. It was almost impressive. They hadn't even waited a full week before trying to weaponize the system they'd taught me to fear. I drove to their office anyway. Not to argue, but to finish what I started. The receptionist froze when she saw me. Apparently, they hadn't told the staff I'd been exiled. I walked past her without a word, heels echoing down the hall like a countdown. Mom was inside the conference room, voice sharp and tight. Dad stood at the head of the table, trying to look powerful but sweating through his collar. Lily sat at the far end, silent. Her eyes met mine, and for a flicker of a second I saw it. Doubt. I closed the door behind me. Am I early for my own execution? I asked. Dad didn't rise to the joke. Sit down, he said. This is your last chance to fix what you've done before this gets ugly. I stayed standing. It's already ugly. Mom's tone softened, rehearsed. Ava, sweetheart, you're emotional. You've misunderstood so much. Stop. The word came out colder than I expected. I dropped a flash drive onto the table. That's everything. Transactions, forged documents, even the fake payroll you ran through Lily's name. Lily's head snapped up. Wait, what? I looked right at her. You thought those Paris trips were gifts? They were cover. They used your identity to hide fraud. You could have gone to prison if this surfaced. Her face drained of color. Dad slammed his fist on the table. Enough. You think you can walk in here and scare us? You've always been dramatic. Actually, I said, cutting him off, I'm calm. That's what scares you. I opened my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. This, I said, sliding it across, is a copy of the official report filed with the state's Financial Crimes Division. Mom blinked. You filed it already? Last week, I said. Before I sent that email. I gave them everything, but I also told them I was open to resolving it privately, if I saw good faith. Dad leaned back, calculating. So you're bluffing. Then test me, I said. I'm sure they'd love to know how long you've been forging your daughter's name on tax returns. The room went silent. Outside, the hum of office chatter faded until I could hear only my own heartbeat. Mom's voice broke first. Ava, please, you can't ruin us. I took a deep breath, steady, deliberate. I'm not ruining anyone. I'm ending something that should have ended years ago. Lily stood suddenly. You forged my name, she said, looking at Dad. He didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. Then in the smallest voice Mom whispered, What do you want from us? I met her eyes. The company transfer. An apology. And for once, the truth. Dad's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced down, then froze. The color drained from his face. He slowly turned the screen toward Mom. It was an email from Rachel, my lawyer. Mr. Morgan, please be advised your daughter has retained full legal representation regarding the financial misconduct in question. Our office has also been contacted by federal auditors regarding preliminary investigation. Mom's hand trembled. Ava, what have you done? I smiled, softly the way she used to when pretending everything was fine. I just made it fair. Lily's voice broke the silence. I'll sign the transfer, she said quietly. If you two don't, I will. Dad looked like he wanted to scream, but he didn't, because he knew it was over. As I turned to leave, Mom's voice cracked behind me. Ava, if you walk out that door. I stopped, looked back. I already did, Mom. You just didn't notice. The door clicked shut behind me. For the first time in 30 years I didn't flinch. 3 months later, the building no longer bore my father's name. The gold plaque that once read Morgan and Sons Accounting now said AM Consulting Group. Same address. Same office. Different ownership. I didn't smile when I walked through the lobby that first morning. Not out of pride, but out of peace. Revenge wasn't a fire anymore. It was a steady heartbeat. Every choice I'd made since my 30th birthday had brought me to this exact stillness. The transfer went through quietly. My father had signed under pressure, my mother followed in tears, and Lily, she just nodded and said, Do what you need to. I gave them a monthly retainer as consultants. It was enough to let them save face, but not enough to let them rebuild what they'd broken. The investigators never came. Rachel made sure of it. The report was suspended after the company restructuring, and my record was cleared of every forged trace. It turned out, legally, I had been the victim and the new owner. A perfect symmetry. Sometimes I still get messages from my mother. They start with guilt, end with nostalgia. Family shouldn't fight like this. Your father's health isn't what it used to be. Your sister misses you. But there's no, I'm sorry. And that's okay. Because I don't need it anymore. Lily and I talk occasionally. She's rebuilding her life, got a real job, moved out, even changed her number so our parents couldn't keep her looped in. Last week she sent me a photo of herself in Paris again. Not on a gift but on her own dime. Her caption read, For once no one paid for my wings. I liked it. No comment, no emoji, just a quiet acknowledgement between sisters who'd both learned what freedom costs. Some nights, I replay that moment. The sound of the withdrawal click, the quiet defiance of taking back what was mine. I used to think revenge was loud. It's not. It's a whisper, the sound of balance returning. I didn't destroy my family. I ended the illusion of one. And in its place I built something that finally felt honest. On my desk sits the same birthday candle I once blew out alone. I light it every year now, not for them, but for the girl who finally stopped waiting to be proud of herself. I take a slow breath, close the ledger, and look out at the morning light stretching over the city. This time there's no bitterness. Just clarity. Because the truth is, they never made me proud. I did that all on my own.